Hey, Brandon.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Of course, thank you for agreeing to be my guest. Excited to learn more about your journey. A couple of weeks ago, you posted a little bit about your military journey and financial background, and I was like, I'm curious to hear more. And so here we are. Thanks again. And as with every podcast, I start with the question, what is your earliest memory of money?
Yeah, I think my first memory of money would have to be putting money, or I guess envelopes, into the overnight deposit box at the local bank. We would, I don't even know if this is something that other banks have, but I can remember the sound of this thing too. Like it's almost like uh, like I don't know, B-rate horror movies where there's the swing and it's just making that like weird squeak sound. That's kind of the sound that it would make, and then it had just a like a little like slam shut, but you would just put the envelope in and it would drop down in there. But I think that's the first thing that I really remember about money was just going with mom and a lot of times my job was to take the envelope out, shove it in there and let it fall down, and that was that was how we deposited money a lot of times.
So did you know what was going on, what was happening when you were depositing that money? How often were you going? You mentioned you went with your mom, but were you going with anyone else?
Yeah, no, it was normally mom that was that was going like I guess my memories of doing that was usually with mom. I don't remember doing that with anybody else really. And I I don't know that I really knew like at first kind of like the whole deal, but eventually I kind of figured out that like okay, cool, like this money has to get into the checking account because there's checks that have been written, and if that money doesn't get in there, then the check, the check's going to bounce. Like there's got to be like I guess I knew eventually that money had to be in the account in order for money to be spent. So I guess it was kind of a beating the checks that were written to the bank, so to speak.
Were these conversations you were having with your mother or just things you were overhearing or seeing her discuss or take
I
care of?
don't remember Yeah, I don't remember any specific conversations like stating that's exactly why. I'm sure there had to have been at least some contextual clues, to me as far as like, what was happening there. I do know I had a checkbook, like when I was fairly young, so I kind of knew like how checks worked and things like that. But I really I can't remember like exactly how I figured out or when I figured out that that's how that kind of system worked. I just knew that you put money into the bank with the overnight safe to or overnight deposit box, and you wrote checks, and that's how you got stuff. So.
hmm What was life like for your family financially? Did you witness any financial challenges or setbacks growing up, or do you feel like your family was pretty financially secure?
I we were not the lowest on the totem pole, so to speak, but we definitely didn't have a lot of extra stuff. So homemade clothes, hand-me-down clothes, were definitely a thing. Mom and dad both worked a lot to kind of make things work. So my dad worked at a lumber yard and then also did construction and built houses and things on the side. And then my mom, and I think she's kind of where I got a lot of my entrepreneur, like kind of hustle mentality. Is she always had several different things going on. She was a dog groomer, but then she also was a seamstress, and so she would, do different things like that. But yeah, I mean, money. There wasn't an abundance of money, I guess you would say, growing up. Bread and gravy was definitely a common meal. And yeah, I mean, there were just, we went to the food bank and, we would volunteer there and help out. And then, we'd take some food home as well. So there definitely wasn't, like I said, there wasn't an abundance, but I don't think that we ever felt like there was always food to eat. Like we never went hungry or anything like that. We always had clothes, but there was not any frills. There was no big vacations, anything like that.
Okay. Do you think that affected you at all growing up, like comparing yourself to friends or other family members, people in the community?
I don't think that the way that, like I don't think that the financial status of our house really affected me too much per se. Just because like almost everybody else around was in a pretty similar situation. There were some that had, you could tell they had a little bit more stuff, like they had, Nikes, things like that. Um, but yeah, no, nothing. It wasn't like a big stark contrast between me and any of my friends, really.
That's awesome. Okay, so when did you decide you wanted to start working, making your own money? What was your first job?
Well, okay, so my first job, I guess really, so my first job really was, I helped my mom with doing sewing. She had an embroidery machine, and I would get, I want to say that if I completed a patch, so like once I put it on, and these were patches like she would make a lot of times in the evenings or whatnot, but once I was old enough, she could kind of get me started on making these patches, and then she could go groom dogs or whatever. But like for like these were patches for like Letterman jackets and things like that, that custom embroidery. And I think I remember getting like maybe 50 cents or $1 a patch. So that was probably like the first like money I made like that. But I had a ton of different jobs, a ton of different hustles. I, like I didn't know that I was an entrepreneur, but really that's what I was. I mean, from the time that I was 12 on, I worked at the lumber yard during the summer, where my dad worked. I would, go and work there, and I got an actual paycheck from there. I mowed lawns. I I guess, taught myself how to weld, and I would make like little horseshoe crafts and I would sell those. I worked at my aunt and uncle's Christmas tree farm. I worked at another Christmas tree farm. Um, where I worked for a plumber. I worked so many different places. Worked at a market research company. Yeah, I mean, I could go on and on, but I don't think you want to talk about, all of my little hustles that I've had, but I've had a lot. And so, yeah, so I think that first, like I just kind of figured out like if I wanted nicer things, then I had to go make money. So, I think like like the first big purchase that I made with money like that, I was fairly young, but was playing basketball and I really wanted a pair of Nike basketball shoes. Um, and so like went and made money, and I remember going to J.C. Penney and buying these. I think they were called Son of Glove, is what they were called. They were like the ones that zipped up in the front. I thought those were super cool. And so that was like my first like big purchase I can remember like for myself with money that I made for myself.
Yeah, I love that. I didn't have that many jobs growing up, but as I got into adulthood, I started getting more and more jobs. Um, so it kind of sounds like you kind of became addicted to making your own money. Um, is that correct or?
I guess you could say I was addicted to making my own money. Um, I guess, yeah, I mean, I guess so. Yeah, I was really good at it, I guess. So I always, like I said, I always had a job. But on the other hand, I also really needed a job because any money I got in my hands, I would spend it really quickly too. So I guess I guess there's that. I guess it's fortunate that, I knew how to make a lot, make a decent amount of money, but yeah, but I don't know where it all went. No.
That was going to be my next question. Like, what types of things were you spending your money on? How were you managing your money at that time? You just answered you weren't really good at saving it or keeping it. And you shared that your one of your big purchases was a Nike pairs of shoes. I
Hmm.
want to say Jordans, but just shoes.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, how do you think your environment or your family members contributed to the way you manage money? You grew up seeing your mother put money in the bank, but do you feel like you picked up on any habits from anyone?
I don't know that I don't know exactly, like I'm sure I did pick up on some habits from family and things like that, but I um I was pretty extreme with like I guess my spending and stuff like that. I just wanted a lot of things. and so like a lot of my money ended up going to some good things, not some not so not so good things. So I was kind of a little bit of a partier whenever I was younger. So alcohol, cigarettes, things like that. I definitely bought plenty of that kind of stuff. And and then I had the Columbia House membership. I had tons of CDs and DVDs and things like that. Car speakers, just all that kind of stuff. I just, it was more or less just to impress friends and go and have a good time with people. I'm a very sociable person, so I guess that kind of drove a lot of my spending if in that regard.
Okay. So let's talk about kind of early adulthood. So you are a military member. Thank you so much for your service. What kind of led to your decision to get into the military?
Yeah, so early adulthood, and then I guess the reason why I joined the military, or joined the army, there's a couple different things. So one, I kind of knew that there wasn't a lot of opportunity where I was from. I mean, we're really from the middle of nowhere, Missouri. I mean, it's pretty much, you go and get, if there's a factory job, there are some factory jobs and things around there. Go work at the lumberyard with my dad or whatever. And I don't know. I just felt like I wanted to do something more than that. But I also didn't want to go to college because I hated high school. I really saw college as like harder high school that I had to pay for. And I just really, I was like, that doesn't seem cool to me. But everybody was saying, hey, I mean, of course, I graduated high school. It was 2005. And so everybody was like, still like, hey, computers, like all that kind of stuff. You've got to get into tech. Tech's the way of the future, whatever. So like, okay, well, Army recruiter called me one day on my lunch break. And he was like, hey, you ever thought about military service? So like, I mean, kind of, I guess. Like, I don't know. And so one thing led to another, and they said, "Hey, yeah, you can do tech jobs in there." I scored high on the ASVAB, and so so that's what I did. I joined in between my junior and senior year of high school, and uh, and then I left right after I graduated. So, yeah, it was really I went straight into it, and really it was just it wasn't necessarily like that I had thought about joining the military from as a little kid. Like I really didn't have any relatives that were in service other than my Uncle Ted that was in Vietnam, but he didn't have a very good time, so he didn't really I don't think he really wanted me to do it, but I mean he supported me as well.
Okay. What did you think you were getting yourself into? Like, what did you, so you said your Uncle Ted didn't have a good experience, but did you, I know you saw the military as a way for more opportunity, but like what else were you thinking when you joined?
I mean, I knew I was going to deploy. And just because, I mean, I didn't know it at the time, but they were gearing up for the surge in Iraq. And, luckily I had great recruiters and they told me, hey, man, like, we're not going to say that, you're not going to deploy, but you're probably going to deploy, man. Like, like everybody's going right now. So, and I'm really thankful for that. I mean, they were square with me and really just told me like, hey, yeah, like, you're probably gonna go. So I was like, okay. I mean, I was actually good with that. Now I didn't really know, like, I didn't know what that meant really. So I'm pretty naive, but yeah, I mean, I knew that I was gonna, probably deploy at some point, and it just, I don't know, it just seemed like something really interesting to do.
Okay. Um, there's a misconception that military members earn a lot of money. Did you go into it thinking you were going to make a lot of money or have financial stability? What were your thoughts going in when it came to your finances?
Yeah, there is a some kind of a misconception that militaries, I mean, I guess it really depends on where you're at. Some places, feel like military makes a lot of money. There's other people that think that military don't make a lot of money, and it really it boils down to perspective. Now, I guess I like where I come from, everybody, yeah, they definitely think, yeah, military, like, oh, you got that steady paycheck, you're gonna get that pension, like you're set for life kind of thing or whatever. And then it's not really quite like that, especially whenever a lot of the places that you're moving to are very high cost of living. So that was definitely an adjustment for me, but I don't think that I don't know that I really understood the financial aspects of military service. I just knew that, I was going to get a paycheck. I knew that I was going to get college paid for through the GI Bill. And so, and that was kind of a bargaining chip for some of my family members that really wanted me to go to college. So that kind of helped out a little bit because a lot of them were like, hey, you're really smart, you should go to college. But I just wasn't interested in. Now, joke's on me because as soon as I got in the army, they're like, "Hey, we want you to take college courses so you can get promoted." I was like, "Oh, of course," but at least they paid for it. So, but yeah, I mean, I think. I think, like military service, depending on where you're coming from, for me, it's definitely been a great monetary benefit. Um, it could have been better if I had been smarter with my money sooner, but I wasn't that like all those spending habits and things like that I already had. Like pretty much as soon as I got money, I spent it. And then once like around that time. I got credit cards. And so, I got more loans and different things like that. So I definitely, yeah, turned up the debt knob quite a bit, and got myself into little sticky situations.
Okay, let's talk about that some more. So you get into the military, you start making your decent pay or your steady paycheck. Did you think that, or was that amount of money something that you were really excited about? Did you think it was on the high side, low side, medium side? And you already kind of shared, but you did get into some debt. So if you could elaborate a little more on your financial experience when you joined the military.
Yeah, I guess my initial kind of financial take on whenever I got into the army was like yeah I had that steady paycheck, but also too I think it was probably not much more or maybe right around like pretty similar to what I was making on my own like in the summers and things like that. So it wasn't really a lot of money to me, so to speak. I mean, at first I was still living in the barracks and all that kind of stuff. So like, it wasn't much different than when I lived at my parents' house. Like housing was covered, and then I got a smaller paycheck, but I was still doing, I was still doing hustles and things like that. Even then, like I joined, back when we still had to shine boots and things like that, and I would do little hustles and I would shine people's boots for them for, $20 a pop. I would take people's CQ shifts, which if people don't, know what a CQ shift or whatever, that's charge of quarters. So like basically you've got to stay, at a building overnight and basically be a guard. And then like one of my favorite hustles that I had, we used to have, I was on nights in some of my training. And so all we had for snacks and stuff was the vending machines, but people would forget to bring like ones and change. Well, I figured that out and I would go and walk, across the base because at the time I wasn't able to have my truck. I would walk across the base. I would go into the bank and get like 51s. I can only imagine what the ladies at the bank thought about me. Like I was coming in there all the time getting $1 bills, but I would go, to school that night with, a pocket full of $1 bills and, I'd say, hey, 3 ones for a five or, something like that. So I would make, money like that. So that was one of my, like one that gives me a chuckle even to this day. I'm like, oh man, I was so dirty to my classmates, but
Genius.
um,
Genius.
so so yeah, but yeah, I mean, I guess bottom line, my spending just continued, and so as soon as I got money, I spent it. If I, and that was, something too. I kind of already knew that like if you wanted to make a big purchase, then like debt was pretty much how I was accustomed to doing that. So I guess kind of back up a little bit, like whenever I needed a truck, I just knew like. if you wanted to buy a vehicle, you go to the bank, you ask you ask to get a loan, whatever they get you a loan for, then that's how much truck you can buy. And then, I did the same thing, I just continued to do that same thing, So definitely definitely got in got myself into a point where I think my first deployment, which was to Iraq, I want to say I think I had 6 credit cards max. I had a Jeep loan. I had financed our wedding ring set. Um, and yeah, I don't know, maybe there might have been something else, but I think that's about it. So, I mean, point in case, I wanted a laptop before I went on deployment because I wanted to, have something to, have save pictures on, have music on, all that kind of stuff. So we went to the Best Buy and, went and I remember my wife and I both filling out the application. And I think I got approved, she didn't, or maybe I got approved for more, but I think I got approved for like an $800 Best Buy card. So, and then they give you like the little receipt with with the card number on it. So I literally applied and maxed that thing in the exact same day. So yeah, so that was like a month before I deployed. So yeah, I definitely piled on as much debt as I could get away with.
What were you funding your lifestyle, or were you just buying big ticket items?
Um, I don't know that I was necessarily funding much of a lifestyle. I think it was mostly big ticket items, but also too, I was spending quite a bit of money going back and forth to see, I guess, now my wife, at the time my girlfriend and then fiance. I mean, I was spending quite a bit of money on plane tickets going back and forth whenever I had 4 days or driving back and forth and, different stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, we weren't living an extravagant lifestyle at all. I think our most common meal at the time was like chicken Alfredo, so very basic meals and things like that. So definitely not living very extravagantly.
You shared and with me at another time and also on this call, your wife also didn't have the best financial habits. So, and more recently, you've been trying to get her on board. So, like, were you guys just both just I don't know even know how to explain what I'm thinking, but how were the two of you when it came to spending money? Was there any voice of reason from either of you at any point, or were the two of you just on the same page with just like just the lack of education, or maybe just going ahead and spending and just deciding to figure that stuff out later?
Yeah, my wife and I think we actually balance each other out fairly well now. Initially, in the relationship, I was the one that made all the money and I was the one that spent all the money. And, she pretty much just as long as, everything was covered, then, as long as we could pay the bills and, she was good with it. And she did get jobs and try and help out and things like that. But it's pretty tough whenever you're moving around and all that kind of stuff. So she kind of, I mean, she's worked all kinds of different places, just trying to kind of bring in a little bit of income, between she's worked at Home Depot there for a while. She was I guess you call it a coach for people with special needs, like whenever they go and have jobs that they're able to do, she would go around with them. And she worked at a bank as a teller. I mean, she's worked at the commissary for a little while. So I mean, just little odds and ends. But we just I think we just didn't have a whole lot of education. It's not that we were, like dumb or anything. It's just like we didn't think about like what, like what we're supposed to be doing. We didn't think about the long-term consequences of that debt. Like we just grew up in a place. I mean, because we both, grew up very close to each other. And as far as, we went to same high school, all that kind of stuff. Similar backgrounds and, just came from a place where everybody pretty much just you're gonna work until you die kind of thing. And so like it was just that was just normal. Like, as long as you can make all the payments, then you were good. But later on, we kind of figured out like that this doesn't really work that well, especially like there after, I guess it would have been right after my first deployment. That's when we were actually putting rent on a credit card there for a little bit. And that was, I still remember that. I didn't even know if we could pay rent. Like I had to walk down to the office and ask the lady, like, hey, will you take a credit card? And they did. So I was like, okay. So that's what we did. But I mean, I knew like at that point, I don't think I had that big of a credit limit. So it probably, I think maybe that was like a month or maybe 2 months that we kind of, did that. And like we ended up just getting moved back on post because like we're like, oh, we got to do something. We can't, we can't do this. So
So when did that turning point come? So, you putting credit card or putting rent on credit cards, have high debt limits or high debt loads and balances. Can you identify like a turning point or moment of clarity on your journey where you're like, okay, this has to stop, or we've got to do things another way?
I would say that, I mean, the real big turning point for us on our financial journey didn't come for quite a while actually, because we were able to kind of get that band-aid on the situation by moving on post. And it wasn't too long after that I got promoted. And so I got a little bit more money. And so we were kind of good there for a little while. But then, just lifestyle creep. I got a truck, got her a newer Jeep and all that kind of stuff. And it wasn't until like the big kind of turning point, we bought a brand new Silverado. Like it's kind of funny now, like, talking about it. Like, I had a truck that I really liked. She had her Jeep that she really liked, but we could only, I got orders to Germany and we could only ship one vehicle. And so our, quote unquote compromise was to instead go buy a brand new crew cab pickup. Finance, $40,000 truck. At the time, I probably didn't even make $40,000 a year. So it's a little crazy to me to even think that we got finance for that. And then ended up having to refinance it right away because the bank wouldn't let us take it to Germany. So that was a whole nother deal that I had to go through. But anyway, fast forward, I was sitting in a cold, stinky tent in Afghanistan looking through bank statements, and I realized that I was going to pay like $7,000 in interest over the course of that truck loan. And that was really like kind of my big like aha, like I'm gonna pay $7,000 in interest for, like for what? Just to use my money sooner. And like I could have almost bought the truck that I had before that I loved. Her name was Marlia. It was a silver F-150. And I could have almost bought Marlia for that same amount of cash. I think I bought that truck initially for like 9,500 dollars or something like that. So I was like, that's crazy. Like this is nuts. And so then I started kind of researching like whatever money stuff or whatever. I found a blog called Get Rich Slowly. I think I read every article on that website at the time. That led me to the Dave Ramsey Total Money Makeover book. And whenever I got home from Afghanistan, I was like, "Hey, sweetie, we're gonna go debt free." And she's like, "Wait, what?" Actually, I think her first her first thing that she said was like, if we don't take out a loan, how will we ever get anything nice? So that was kind of like, like where we were at that point is like, all right, like how 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 is this possible without debt?
Yes, I mean, it's definitely requires a total mental makeover. And so that is a very interesting question. Like she couldn't see the big picture or just the other side of things where, okay, well, maybe you have the money saved to buy the things that you like. So you were already into getting your finances together. You were already listening to Dave Ramsey. And so you get home and tell your wife about the changes you guys are making in your finances. Um, can you remember any other approaches to money management that you took, or any other type of education you worked on gaining? or was it mainly like blogs and Dave Ramsey?
Yeah, really. As far as like how we learned about finances and other sources that that we use to kind of get ourselves educated, I guess on kind of a better way to do it. It really was the Total Money Makeover was really the big start, and then the other was just that that blog Get Rich Slowly. I mean, those were really the two main sources of information for us, and I mean the Total Money Makeover. I mean, we literally read it chapter, like I would read a chapter, then and she would read a chapter and vice, we did that for the whole book. We would discuss it and go, okay, cool. We'll implement this. We're not going to do that. We'll implement this. We'll kind of do that. And so like really we didn't follow it to a T. We were kind of, I guess, what he would call Dave-ish. And so because we kind of knew like I should be, like we're not gonna not go do anything. We were living in Germany at the time. Like we were, and we kind of knew like we would never be 20 somethings, without, excuse me. We kind of knew that we would never be like childless 20 somethings in Germany ever again. And so we kind of knew like we need to kind of capitalize on that. And I'm glad that we did that. We didn't go and do anything crazy. I mean, we still spent most weekends just walking around and doing cheap things and all that. But we did go on a cruise and different things like that while we were getting out of debt. And so really, yeah, we just use that resource and then like I said the Get Rich Slowly blog. Like I remember we implemented Money Day from his blog and we've done it ever since and so that's kind of like a just an annual check in to see where we're at and all that kind of stuff. And so we've really just kind of just kept that going and slowly kind of built up over time.
Okay. And so you were able to get her on board. Like what when she mentioned how would you ever get anything nice if you didn't finance it? Did you like show her the books? Did you kind of explain it to her? Obviously, you mentioned she would read a chapter, you would read a chapter, so she was educating herself as well. But was there any type of resistance there in getting her on board?
I think my wife was pretty receptive to it after the kind of initial shock of just, hey, like, this is totally different than how we've ever done it before. But over time, she's really come around and actually she's, over time we've also figured out like kind of our, I guess our money types or whatever. And like she's definitely a natural saver, whereas I'm a natural spender. But she's very money avoidant. And I'm more of like that money kind of money worship, type, like I'm all about, making more money and all that. Like, hey, don't worry about spending money, like, cause I can just make more tomorrow. Like very confident, very, little cocky like that. Where she's much more like, hey, like I don't want to spend money because I don't want to not have money. Because she, definitely, grew up in that kind of scarcity, setting as well. But no, she's been really receptive and actually she's um, even now, like we've come around quite a bit as far as being able to talk about money and plan things long term. Like, I mean, I love to think about spending money. So I like look at planning way far out. Like, hey, we can do this, and then like I'll plan it out. Like, okay, we need to put this much amount in for this and that, da 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 da, just for inflation, all the stuff. Like, okay, cool. I know we need to put exactly this amount into this account, and we'll be able to buy that at this date. Where she's like, hey, we don't hold on, we don't have that money yet. Like you can't spend it before we have it. So
Yeah, it's important to have a spouse or a partner who trusts you and just is on the ride with you and will trust that whatever you bring to them is in the best interest of the family. And so that's awesome. I met your wife at FinCon. She seemed like a very peaceful and calm woman. So I can see how she compliments you. Um, mhm where was that question? So, how do you approach money now? Or what are some ways you manage your money now, you and your wife?
Yeah, I mean the evolution of our managing money is really I don't know, we've kind of gone through a few different iterations of things, but really what we've ended up kind of landing on, I guess partly by accident, but just by trial and error, and then eventually I went to school for financial planning and all that, so that kind of helped out a little bit with kind of understanding like that I do certain things with money because I have these money scripts and different things like that that kind of, you know, tell me like, hey, this is just what feels natural to me. And so over the years, we've kind of built different systems and habits that have really helped us kind of keep things on track without making a lot of work. So like we budget maybe a little bit differently than some other people, but we kind of have I guess a hybrid system to where we do a lot of automation. So have things just automatically get paid and all that kind of stuff. We also have envelopes that we use for a lot of different expenses, and then we everything kind of gets decided by a master Excel spreadsheet that we update. Actually, we really only update it about annually, or if there's like a major change. So, like if we move to a different duty station or something like that, then obviously our expenses will change a little bit, as far as rent and things like that. But really, I mean, I would say we've kind of slowly developed a pretty smooth system for us. Like it just works out. Like and we have to do things that kind of I guess kind of work with both of our personalities. So like say for instance, we can't leave any money in the checking that I can't spend. Otherwise, I will spend it. But also too, we need to leave, money in some accounts that my wife can see so she knows like, okay, cool. We have money, like, we're not spending all the money, like we're okay. And so like it really is kind of a balancing act between our two personalities and how we interact with money.
Yeah, I love that. It's clear you weren't forced to completely change your personality or your behaviors, and neither was your wife. You just came to a middle ground to decide on what works best for the two of you. So I love that for you guys. What um advice would you give anyone else on their journey now? Or if you could go back in time and give yourself some advice, what would you share?
Oh man, yeah. Advice that I would give, or advice that I would give to my younger self. So I, believe it or not, I actually wrote a letter to myself, to my 18-year-old self, and published it on my blog, because I had thought about that, and really, I mean, it just boiled down to starting to save sooner, not not dealing with debt and stuff like that, all of that, but really, I mean, I think one of the biggest things that keeps people from getting control of their finances is, kind of that either analysis paralysis or just not knowing where to start and things like that. And so that's kind of my biggest thing. I would say just get started, just do something, whether that's, opening up a high yield savings account, just looking at budgeting apps, like, or get a, download a budgeting template or something like that. That's kind of my big thing is just do a little something and then you can kind of build with that over time. Because that momentum, it really is helpful.
Definitely. I mean, it's just one step at a time for everything, and it goes for your finances as well. What are you doing now, Brandon? And how can the audience keep up with you? And what kind of work do you do in this space?
Yeah, as far as me, as far as like what I'm doing in the finance industry and all that kind of stuff. So I all that kind of stuff I do in the margins. I'm still serving, and so I'm looking to retire here in the next couple of years and move into this kind of stuff full time. But I do paraplanning and content writing for financial advisors. But then I also run my own blog, Enlisted Money, and really that's just kind of to I guess you would say it's a passion project, so to speak, but really that's just I'm trying to build the content that I wish I would have consumed and applied whenever I was 18 years old. So I'm a big believer that experience is cheap if you're smart enough to get it secondhand. So I'm trying to kind of provide that that guidance and those stories and things like that, so that people don't have to make all those mistakes on their own. They can just learn from me because I've already made plenty of them.
Yeah, and you love to share, which is great. I'm someone who's scared of sharing, but I love to see you posting. I love the series you have now with trying to find a high yield savings account. So you are definitely putting in the work. And so can everyone find you? What is the handle that everyone can find you at?
Yeah, if people want to, kind of see what I'm doing or connect with me, the best ways to do that is on my website, sign up for the newsletter there, or on Instagram. I'm on there quite a bit. My Instagram handle is at enlisted money guy. And the website's just enlistedmoney.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate you sharing your story with us. I'm sure a lot of people will get something out of this. And yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me on. This has been, yeah, a lot of fun. I hadn't thought about a lot of this stuff in quite some time, so it's been a nice little walk down memory lane.
I love that. I love that. And before I hit end, I noticed I kept saying military, and then when you would answer, you would say specifically army. So is there something I
Mhm.
need to learn with that? Is it like, do I have to be specific about, I know you guys are very proud of the branch that you are a part of, but for us civilians, is this something that I kept messing up or something that you
No, No, I wouldn't say that, it's like a mess up or anything like that, but there are nuances between all the different branches and things like that. And yeah, they're, it's kind of like, brotherly, sisterly, rubs, with each other and all that. But like we're, kind of one of those, like we all give each other crap, but nobody's gonna give, our brothers or sisters crap, no matter what branch they are, they're from. So yeah, no, I wouldn't say you're fine to say military. I mean, if you know somebody's, in a particular branch, you can say that too. But I don't know. I'm pretty, I turned in my feelings when I joined the army, so like you're not gonna hurt my feelings. So
My goodness, I don't know if I could have done that. Maybe that's why that opportunity never came uh across my way, but yeah. Thank you for your service and thank you for sharing your story with us today.
yeah, absolutely. No, thank you.